I've been thinking an awful lot about what my favorite quad is. I own over 40 quads now, most of which are on the wall back there. But which one is my favorite? Is it this 3-inch pork chop, HD0 digital toothpick? No, it's not that one. Is it this, my Gep RC Mark V with HD0 and the Nano 90? No, it's not that one. Is it this, my Quadmula Siren F3 Split Mini with a Vista and a whole lot of other cool stuff? No, it's not that one either. What it actually is this, my Siren F3 with the O3 system and 3-inch props. Hey everybody, I'm Bacon Ninja, and yes, this little 3-inch quad is my favorite quad. And you've seen it on the channel before, because I posted a video a while back saying that does it matter that if you freestyle a 3-inch quad, does it matter if it's not a 5-inch quad? Because I think the consensus really was no. No, it doesn't matter. You can freestyle a 5-inch quad, but a build like this will let you freestyle a 3-inch quad super freaking hard. You can rip this thing super duper hard. And that's not really the only reason why this is my favorite quad. Before I get into why it really is my favorite quad though, let me run over what the actual build is with you, because it has been a while since that original video, and I'd like to show you some additional things that I have discovered since then. This build is running on the Quadmula Siren F3 Split frame, which is a split deck, so it has a full split deck design with interlocking arms and an isolated stack mounting system that includes M2 screws, covered in some rubber, which is actually pretty nice. I enjoy that on my Quadmula F5 Split and F5 Split Mini. It does a really good job of isolating the stack from the arms. A lot of split deck designs with a center key, the puzzle piece thing that we're really used to seeing, don't necessarily isolate your stack screws from the stack. So yeah, this one does really, really well. The arms are a 1-bolt change, which I really enjoy, and that stack mounting system is just really, really nice. And for the stack in this one, I am running the Skystars F722 HD Pro with their K55 55 amp ESC, and that's where the first bit of trouble is in this build. Because the F3 Split is actually a really short deck height, so it's really hard to get that thing in there and make it set. And to make matters even more difficult, the capacitor is really, really hard to get in there. There's just not a lot of room for the cap. I have mine in Quadmula's stock holder, and it is just the capacitor that comes with the frame, because yes, capacitors do come with the frame with Quadmula frames. Yeah, it's just that one in their stock TPU holder, and I have had to wiggle it in there really, really, really gently to get it to set in there in a way that doesn't interfere with the main leads on the back. But I have got it in there. I have got it done, and a lot of other people have too. It just does take a lot of fiddling. Now, really the problem is, because I'm running the K55 Skystars ESC, the ESC is longer than 20x20. So it's a 20x20 mounting system in this quad, but the ESC is just a little too long. So that capacitor interferes with the rear of the ESC, and, you know, things sitting on things, touching, feeling, vibrating. Is that the song? I think it's not, but that's really what goes on. So I've had to be really, really careful putting the cap in this. And if you decide to build a quad like this, you're going to have to be very, very careful too. One minor adjustment that I might make to this quad, if you're going to build it, is something that is a more traditional square 20x20 stack. There are some by Diatone in the Mamba line. There are a lot of companies that make a good 20x20 stack. The reason I went with this one though is because it has a full 55 amp rating. And if you are worried about how many amps this pulls, let's get on to the motors so we can talk about that. Because the motors on this build are the Emax Eco II 2004 3000 kV motors, and I have paired those with HQ 3.1x3x3 props. And I've also paired it with HQ's 3.1x3x4 blade props, quad blade props. I really like the quad blade props. I went to the tri-blade props on this. I originally started out, if you watch the original video about this build, with the quad blade props. And the reason I went back to tri-blade is because every time you crash it, you will be putting a new prop on. But I picked these motors pretty specifically to keep the torque up and the height low, because these are T-mount props. Good old T-mount props, which means that we are subject to having shaft bends. And if we keep the motors lower profile, the shaft bends tend to be better. Now, alternatively, if you're going to build something like this, you could do something with a 16mm motor all the way up to an 18mm motor. I just wouldn't go too high, and if you go to something with a more traditional shaft that's not T-mount, that's a little bit thicker, you probably have a little more luck. Now, what I will say about motors that typically have the prop shaft and not the T-mount is that even though they have that prop shaft, it's not the same thickness all the way through the motor. Just because the stator size is so large, if they put a big honkin' shaft in there, it's going to take up a lot of room. So they actually taper that down going through the bearings, and that's kind of where the problem still exists. So even though it has a true motor shaft, you may not have all the meat inside the bearings, and you're still subject to bending them. A lot of people on 3-inch quads run a 1404 motor. I feel like that is just underpowered, because the point of this build was to have a similar thrust-to-weight ratio to a 5-inch quad. And if you look at something in the normal 3-inch range, like that pork chop that I threw earlier, which is back there crying somewhere because it whacked itself pretty hard on the floor. It's fine. It'll be fine. Suck it up, pork chop. Anyway, if you look at something like that, its thrust-to-weight ratio is super high. It's a very light quad. That's in the 65 gram range, and it puts out a crap ton of thrust. It is a 3-inch quad on 2S with super high kV motors. Puts out a lot of thrust. This was designed to have less thrust for its weight, so that it did things like fling and freestyle moves in a more traditional 5-inch way. So consider that when you are building your quad. I didn't go with super high kV motors because I went with 6S on this, which is another reason why I picked a 55 amp ESC. Now I will say that with the 2004 3000 kV motors on 6S with no throttle output limit, I am usually pulling around 35 amps total, so you can really get away with a whole lot less, but I really would try to stick to 35 or 40 because you will be on the top end of that, even with the tri-blade props. If you start putting on 4-blade props, you could be even higher than that. And the real magic sauce here is back in the back, because that is a DJI O3 Air Unit crammed in there, and you can see my capacitor right there in front of it. There's not a whole lot of room for that cap, but the O3 Air Unit is in the back, and I do have the O3 camera in the front, complete with an ND filter, and the isolation TPU plates that Quadmula can make for this quad as well. And that is really the secret sauce of this quad, is that it has the O3 Air Unit in it. That is not alone the reason why this is my favorite quad, because I have a normal Siren F5 Split back there with an O3 Air Unit that's full 5 inches. This is a crap ton of fun to fly. It has the same air unit in it, so it's not the video quality or anything like that that makes this my favorite quad. But what does make it convenient is that with that air unit, you really don't need to run a GoPro unless you just really, really want to. Now, I'm one of those people that's going to run a GoPro anyway, just because I like the 10-bit color out of the GoPro better than the 10-bit color out of the O3 unit. I like to color grade. I like to do other things. I like different frame rates for my FPV footage than I do my pilot cam, just because 120 FPS on 4K looks really like flicker book a lot of times when you go to edit it. And I like to run my GoPros down at 30 or maybe 60 if I'm trying to do some slow-mo footage, which I almost never do. And I never run stabilization anyway, so I never turn Rocksteady on in there. I never really do anything, so I set the pilot settings on my O3 Air Unit to be more about what I want to see in my goggles as far as contrast, light adaptations with the algorithms, that kind of stuff. I set it for what I want to see in the pilot feed. But it really gives this quad the ability to be small and still pack a whole lot of video punch if you want it to. This thing can totally do it. Absolutely. And like I said, there is an ND filter on the front of this. I get a lot of questions about the Siren F3 and F5 Split, actually, about ND filters. Now, I'm using Freewell's ND filters because they were nice enough to provide them to me a long way back, and they work really, really well, and they are super low profile on the edges. So I'm still able to get them on and off the camera, even though the standoffs, if you look at the standoff there, let me try to get that into focus for you. If I can get it into focus for you, there's not a lot of room between the filter and the standoff, but I can still get it on and off pretty much just fine. Sometimes I have to get in there with, a little plastic tool or something, but you can get it on and off, and the Freewell filters are really good about that. And to round this off, I am running G&B's 550 milliamp hour 6S packs on this with an XT30, and I do use an adapter because I have an XT60 on the quad. And I left that XT60 there because I want a lot of variability in what batteries I use for this, because that really is the reason why I like this quad the best. If I could only pick one quad to fly for eternity, which I don't know. I'm not going to be here for eternity. As much bacon grease as I eat, I'm going to be lucky to be here for much, much less than eternity. Yeah, anyway, if I could only fly one quad for that amount of time, I would pick this one simply because it's so versatile. That is really the reason. It has the O3 Air Unit, so I don't have to run an action cam. It has a ton of power. We'll get to flight footage in a minute. So I can rip really hard with this thing. It has a full-size O3 Air Unit, so I can go the full range of the Air Unit with 4K and 1080p if I choose to use my goggles too. It has the ability to act as a cinewhoop. All I got to do is throw some whoops around those, which they do make for 3-inch quads, and you've got yourself a 3-inch cinewhoop. It can be quiet. It can be loud. It really sounds like a whistle most of the time, so it won't piss people off. It is small. And the real question that I know you have, because a bunch of people have asked me this question, is this quad under 250 grams? And I'm here to happily tell you, no, it is not. It's not under 250 grams. Because I didn't design it to be under 250 grams. I understand the whole thing with remote ID and what's going to happen in September and home-built quads over 250 grams, yada, yada. Yes, I know. I understand. And if you're one of those people that want to build it under 250 grams, you absolutely can. You might have to take out the O3 and put a Vista in. You might have to do some other video system, maybe walk snail to get the weight down. You may have to run a lighter stack. You may have to run lighter motors. There's a whole lot you can do to get it under 250 grams. I did not do that because my goal was to have the thrust to weight ratio of a 5-inch quad because that's what I enjoy and that's what I want to fly. And I wanted it to have the power and the torque to be able to do whatever the hell I want to do with it because I wanted that kind of versatility. And one thing it does well, these 556S packs, it will fly these. But it will also fly these, which are 1300 milliamp hour 6S packs. It will fly these 1300s as well. And it gets about 3 minutes on one of these 550s, but on a 1300, I am getting almost 10 minutes. So I can cruise for almost 10 minutes. And if I'm editing the way I should be editing, you're watching some of that cruising right now. No, it is not super agile with a 1300 milliamp hour pack on it. I'm showing you this footage first because it's intentionally not agile. I am cruising around. I did not change the tune at all. This is just the tune that I have on it. Now you might notice that it's yaw twitching a little bit, and that's because I crashed it a whole bunch, and I probably damaged my yaw axis on the gyro. But this flight goes on for literally 10 minutes. It is 10 minutes of this cruisies on a 1300 on this quad, because the quad itself weighs 248 grams with no pack. That's just dry, 248 grams. With my 550 milliamp hour pack, I'm coming in right under 300 grams. With a 1300 mAh pack, I dare not weigh it. But it will get off the ground, and I can hold my throttle at around 35-40% and be at a hover. So that's plenty of room to be a cinewhoop. I can strap a 1300 mAh pack on this thing, make it a cinewhoop with the O3 Air Unit on it, and go get 4K footage of whatever the crap I feel like getting with a non-menacing drone that just sounds like a whistle. And all I got to do is pack one of them, and it's this small, so I can throw it in my bag, I can throw it anywhere and take it with me. Because the quad you have with you is the quad that you will fly, and this one is easy to have with you. When you're packing a bunch of 5-inch drones, or even just a 5-inch drone, it's hanging off your bag, you're hitting things with its props. There are ways to pack them without doing that. You want to take the props off, you want to stack them, blah, screw that stuff. I just throw this stuff on the outside. This little bitty quad, it's not menacing, it doesn't hurt anybody's feelings when they see it. It doesn't terrify your grandmother when you fly it over her, because it just sounds like a whistle. It sounds like a toy, but it's not a toy. And that brings us to the other thing I really enjoy about it. It freaking rips hard. It rips really, really hard. This is freestyle footage out of this quad. No, it's not sped up. This is just the O3 Air Unit's output. I have done literally nothing to it. I've not color graded it. I've not done anything. This is just how hard this quad rips. And that's not even with a complete tune. I haven't put a ton of time into tuning it. This is on my 6S 550. Obviously, it's not the 1300 because it doesn't fly like a freaking boat, but it is just straight up very good at ripping. Very, very good at ripping for its size. It doesn't fly like a toothpick. That was the goal. I didn't want it to fly like a toothpick. I could build a bunch of toothpicks, 2S, 3S toothpicks. Hell, I could build a 6S toothpick if I really wanted to. We would just call that a 6S racing drone, basically, because a 6S racing drone is basically a 6S toothpick when you really get straight down to it. And This is not that. This is designed for freestyle. Top mount battery, rugged frame, big enough motors to get the response done, and a whole crap load of thrust when you want it. And that's exactly what this is, and that's why I built it the way that I built it. Now, like I said, there are some variations you can make if you want to build this exact build, and if you want a rundown of this exact build, head over to my website, letsgetgreasy.com, where I have a complete rundown with some pictures of the quad in pieces or open so that you can see how I did it, just in case you want to get the same idea. But there are some variations you can make to this to make it lighter. Like I said, you don't have to run the O3 Air Unit. You can totally get by with a walk snail in here because the F3 Split does have the ability to mount up a full-size walk snail transmitter, especially the V2 if you want to do something like Starlight, and use the 32 gigs onboard storage to record 1080p if you're not so into 4K, and you can save quite a bit of weight there, as that whole setup weighs about 30 grams, which is less than the O3 Air Unit by quite a bit. And then you could cut the size of the stack down. I used the 55 amp ESC because I'm a crazy human being, but you don't have to do that. You could run a 35 or 40 in a more traditional 20 by 20 layout and cut some weight there. You could also use smaller motors, a 1508. That's a little tall for me, but you can do it. T-Motors 16 millimeter motors. There are a lot of variations on 15 to 18 millimeter motors in various heights. But just remember, this is a 2004 motor, so if you go figure out the stator size of that, which I'll put on the screen now. Yeah, did I do the math? Did I do it? I think I did it. Whatever that stator volume is, that's kind of the target you're going to want to get. And I put the formula for how to get your stator volume. Yep, I did that too, in case you want to add it up. So that's kind of the stator volume place you want to be. I went with 3000 kV because I went 6S, even though these motors aren't really designed for that. They're really designed for 4S, which is why I went with lower kV. And I recommend you go 6S too if you want that kind of power. I can totally fly this thing on 4S though. If that's a choice you want to make, you might be able to cut some weight there. So there's a lot of opportunity to cut weight if you want to get this whole thing down under 250 and not have to comply with the FAA's US regulations for remote ID in September. You totally can. But I highly recommend building a 3-inch freestyle quad, and I highly recommend doing it on the Quadmula Siren F3 Split. And you know, you're going to ask me now, because it's one of the last questions you're going to have. Why this frame? Why this frame of all frames? I know you said, Bacon, that you like the way the keyway works and that it has isolation for the stack and all this other stuff, but why this frame? Well, let me tell you why this frame. Obviously, I was going to tell you. Why would I hint at it and not tell you? Why this frame? You could choose an Apex 3. You could choose an AOS 3.5. They're all really good options, but why did I pick this frame? Because for a 3.5 inch, if I wanted to send it in freestyle, I would probably pick the BQE Rip Squeak, right? But I don't think BQE is making the Rip Squeak anymore. This frame is a really, really good freestyle focused frame. No, it is not the best resonance characteristics, but it does have a really good arm interlock design with the isolation plate that I really, really like. And if we take a look at the black box logs, that does happen. It's there. Obviously, it does happen. It's in the middle, though, where we don't really have to worry about it being down in the gyro traces, and the filtering does a really good job to take it out. So it's not too big of a deal. It's not ideal, but it's not too big of a deal. Now, if you want something a little bit cleaner, obviously there are frames on the market that are cleaner. But if we take a look at the other axes, they're relatively clean. We do have a little bit of noise down low, but again, my filters are doing a really good job of taking care of that as well. So yeah, it's just fine, and it holds up really well. I have crashed this thing hundreds of times and have had not even close to a delamination, no arm breaks, nothing. Quadmula actually sent me this frame and the other frames many, many months ago, and I have crashed the crap out of them since then, and I have used none of the spare arms that I have on any of the frames. None of them. And I have hit concrete, and I have hit metal poles, and I have destroyed things riding on top of the quad. But I have not ever destroyed anything carbon-wise or camera-wise or standoff-wise on this frame, and that says something for sure, considering that has not been my experience with some other frames, where I just tap the hard dirt where I fly and my arm delaminates, like the Gep RC Mark V, which I threw in the floor for really good reasons, because I'm tired of putting arms on that freaking thing, and I would rather not. Yeah. Anyway, that is my final assessment of this build, because I said I was going to whenever I did that intro video. It really wasn't about the build, it was more about 3 inches versus 5 inches. And I have been thinking a whole lot about what my one favorite quad would be if I had to pick something off my wall out of my entire fleet of 40-ish quads. And if I could only pick one, it'd be this one. For all the reasons that I listed, it would be this one. So if you're interested in building it, there are links in the description below to all of the components. They are not affiliate links because I don't care about money. I only want bacon, and bacon doesn't necessarily come from money sometimes. It doesn't. Sometimes you got to chase the pig yourself. That's just the way it works. I'm in Texas. There are lots of farms. There's opportunity for pig. Anyway, I don't care about that stuff, so there's no affiliate links down below. They're just regular links to my favorite stores, and buy them from your favorite stores if you want as well. What I will say, if you choose the Quadmula frame, you're going to have to ship it from overseas because that's just the way it works, and I have seen the times for shipping be kind of long, so hang in there. It's worth it if you want it, but you might build this exact same build on something else. Just let me know what you're going to do in the comments below and what you think about a 3-inch quad flying like this one does, and being kind of a everything daily driver if you're only going to own one. What do you think about that? Is that reasonable? Are you surprised at this performance of quad? Are you surprised at the flexibility? Or do you think this is just the stupidest idea you've ever seen? And why would anyone do this? Because that's a totally valid opinion too. So give it to me. Give it to me down there. And if you feel like supporting the channel and you happen to think this was stupid and you want to see me do stupid things, or maybe you don't think it was stupid and you still want to see me just do stupid things, you can always head over to my Patreon, where 100% of this stupid stuff is funded by them. If it's not sent to me by a manufacturer who doesn't pay me anyway, then it's provided by the patrons, the Buy Me Coffee donations, and the channel members, because channel memberships are on for some reason on this channel. I did that. There's a couple of them out there, and those people are super special because they were the first ones. Yeah, anyway, if you feel like supporting the channel and yeah, you want to see me do more stupid stuff, then head over there too. And if you want to talk about it even more, there is a Discord, the Bacon Corner, and we can talk about it over there. And there's a lot of people flying Quadmula frames over there with a lot of different configurations. If you want to ask for some opinions that aren't just mine, because I get it, one pilot's opinion, especially someone who's reviewing this stuff, isn't always the best way to go. But if you want to get more, I have a whole bunch of people over there that would be happy to tell you about it. So head on over. Anyway, that's all I have. I'm going to leave you with some flight footage after this instead of a stupid outro, because flight footage is cool. Yeah, it's cool, right? It's cool. Flight footage is awesome. No, anyway, I'm going to leave it with you because that's what I feel like doing. But until next time, stay greasy, and I'll catch you later.
Long enough to say we fly, rushing all the walls, leaving what is wrong behind. 'Cause all we got is each other. Let's prove all we can. Lightning into the fire. Let's prove all we can. Under the moonlight. We live long enough to say we fly, rushing all the walls, leaving what is wrong behind. 'Cause all we got is each other. Let's prove all we can. Lightning into the fire. Let's prove all we can. Under the